First of all, I want to just thank everyone for being here today. I won't say it's good news, but to us as board members, I think that is great news for us on where we're moving as a district as a whole. And first of all, I just want to, before I go any further, we always have to thank our team HISD, our teachers and our principals for working really, really hard since 2015 in closing those achievement gaps across the district. And I am honored today to stand here to serve as the HISD board president of the largest school district in Texas and the largest school district, 7th largest in the country. Many of you know you've read the Chronicle today, and I just got back late last night from Austin. So it's been 2.5 grueling days of meeting with our Texas legislatures on this particular issue. From meeting with Commissioner Mike Morath all the way down to Deputy Commissioner to all of our Harris County delegation that serves us in the Texas House of Representatives. One of the things I want to say in 2015, when this piece of legislation was passed, which we all know it as 1842, this bill was authored by Harold Dutton. This was his brainchild, his bill, to be able to say that schools that have been long-standing schools, that in other words, we need to fix the schools. But one of the things that this bill does is just give us two options, and that is where we are today. One of the options are whether or not we come into an agreement as a board to see if there needs to be management of appointed board of managers from the Texas legislature to be able to govern the board, move accordingly. That's what that bill does. Or it tells us to close schools. So Harold Dutton authored the bill. The bill was passed. And I want to thank Representative Garnet Coleman and Representative Amanda Wiley for standing firm as our representative and voting no against this bill. And that's what brought us here today. So again, thank you. I've been here on the HISD school board now for almost 4 years. I am in my 4th year, and I'm committed to making sure that every child succeeds here in the Houston Independent School District. When we started this journey in 2015, I can say we had almost about 60 or 70 schools that were in IR. That means improvement required, meaning that many of our schools, 60 plus or 70 plus of our schools did not meet standard in 2015. But since 2015, we have closed that achievement gap, and I am so proud of HISD. As you will see when the preliminary results come out on next week on the 15th, we can almost close project from where they say that we will have under 10 schools that are currently on that list. And as projected, according to our current projections with HISD, we have eliminated out of those schools from then until now, I want to say all but 50 schools have been taken off the IR list as of today. So on Monday of this week, I met with the TEA officials and the state legislators in Austin to talk about our efforts and where do we go from here to turn around chronically and underperforming schools. As trustee of the south side of Houston, which I represent District 9, I live right next door to our school teachers, our principals, our students, our parents of these struggling campuses. And they are my neighbors, and many of them are my friends. The students are part of HISD, and we consider that we are a family, and we're saying that when a family needs you, you show up, and that's why we are here today. It's important as a community that we continue to pull together and embrace these schools that are before us today. Since I've been on the board, I have worked very hard to equip schools that's particularly in my district, like Worthing High School, with the necessary resources that need to be successful. Allocating those necessary funds and reconstituting the school, which we brought in new leadership at Worthing High School that gave the campus significant resources, education, leadership, and teachers that they needed. Even though it is going to be a challenge to turn this school around in 11 months, we're committed to make sure that the students at Worthing High School and my two other campuses in District 9 are very successful. Also, there is some good news. Our data shows we are continuing to lower the numbers of underperforming campuses district-wide. We are confident, based on our projections, we are here at TEA releases on Monday that the latest school designation on August 15th, there will be less than 10 of these schools that will be removed, that will remain on this particular list. I am the leader of HISD and on the board, and we are a team of 10. We're going to work hand in hand with the administration to create a specific plan for the campuses that have been IR for 4 years plus to ensure that we help these students succeed. This is very personal to me, and many of you may know I was born and raised in Fifth Ward, and my high school is considered one of the top high schools on the list, and that is Cashmere High School. So this week, these last 2 days have been very, very emotional to me when someone looks across the desk at 3 o'clock on yesterday and asks me, why don't I close Cashmere High School? A school that holds dear to me, a school that I graduated from. I'm graduating from out of the 15% of my class. And if you can see today that every child should have, every student in HISD should have the opportunity to succeed. I am a product of Cashmere High School, and I am the president of the largest school district in Texas and the largest in the country. So I want every child in HISD to have everything that I had. Great teachers, great resources, teachers with my family, great students, and great leadership. So everyone should have the ability to succeed. I would like to introduce to you Rhonda Skillern-Jones, one of our former and past presidents of the Houston Independent School District, who represent District 2.
Good afternoon. I'm going to move this down. Thank you for joining us. I represent the Northeast and Northwest District, and the majority of these schools reside in the Northeast area. As you know, Cashmere has been the subject of a lot of the controversy here. So I first want to start out by talking about Cashmere. In the last 2 years since we've appointed a leader there, and Nancy, since she's been there, Cashmere has made more gains than they have in the previous 7 years that they've been there. So they're headed in the right direction. And they were almost out of IR this year. They've come closer than they've ever come. But the legislation, well, I don't know if it's the legislators or TEA, but TEA will be raising the standard again in March as they come close. And that's been a long-standing problem. As we approach those marks to get those schools out, then we have inconsistent goals. So it's like you meet the needle and they move the ball. So that's one of the problems. But in order for Cashmere to come out, we had to do something very drastically different. We addressed poverty. And if you look at the statistics on each one of these schools, you will see the correlation between the effects of poverty and low achievement. It's just that simple. So we've started with wraparound models, starting at Cashmere, that we're going to expand into Wheatley and Worthing, where those kids get the support services to address the issues that they bring to school with them. We can no longer educate in the fashion that we used to. We have to address the things that the children, that their neighborhoods and their family situations present as barriers to learning. And that's why we've moved the needle. People have asked me for a simple explanation on House Bill 1842. It's bigger than just 1842. So I've constructed this example to give you. It's like the Texas Constitution guarantees that the legislature provide a public education. So I'm using a ship to illustrate that. The manufacturer of the ship would be the state. The captain of the ship would be the school board. The crew of the ship would be the superintendent and the administration. So the legislature is responsible for providing the framework and the funding to build public education. The school board is provided with telling the administration where we need to go, what the destination for the ship is, and that's success for every student. And the superintendent and his administration are responsible for figuring out how to do that, the vehicle by which we get to that success for every child. This framework only works if the legislature, the school board, and the superintendent are all steering the ship in the right direction. If you have the captain heading the ship in the right direction, the crew trying to get there, and somebody in the bottom in the galley drilling holes, the ship's not going to get there. When you defund public education, that's drilling a hole. When you pass laws like these that are blanket and do not take into consideration all of the things that happen to kids in Texas and all of the situations and the variances in districts, that's drilling a hole. When you do not put the support in that public education needs, it's drilling a hole. And more importantly, when you allow vested interests in charters, privatization, and funding and dollars to matter more than kids, that's drilling the biggest hole. And that's what this is. I'm going to be clear. I don't have to be politically correct, so I'm not going to. I'm going to be very clear. When vouchers don't work, when privatization efforts don't work, when charter management efforts don't work, when annexation efforts don't work, this is just the next gateway into dismantling public education, period. If you are able to do this to the largest school district in Texas, then that allows you to then set the precedent to do it to the next 39 that you have on the list that have multiple IR schools. No one is talking about the fact that we have 283 schools. Less than 10 or 10 of them are on this list. So we have 273 that are working well. But that's not the focus of this. If you look at our percentages in HISD, we're a target for this. But look at our percentages, and then look at some of the districts who have 18 schools, 6 of which are failing. They have a larger percentage, but they're not threatening to take over theirs. This is a precedent to dismantle public education. And it's not just a local trend. It's not just a state trend. It's a national trend. And it's coming from the culture in this country around using the last pot of public money for private profit. And anyone who thinks it's not, just wait and see. That's where we're headed. That's the culture. That's the climate. And this is an effort to do just that. We care about these kids. The kids matter more to us than the dollars do. So because of that, we are working with the superintendent and the administration daily. We are coming up with innovative ideas. Dr. Wilson and I were standing back in the back talking about that because we intend to fight this in the classroom. We think our kids are capable of learning. We are going to give them the tools that they need to do that. We're going to concentrate and focus our efforts this year on each individual child in each individual classroom in each of those individual schools. And we are going to push and push through this 9 months to ensure that those kids do not miss the mark. And then we'll see what the next plan is. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. I am proud to represent the area I represent and the kids I represent. I am proud to work with my colleagues on the board to do this job. It's a thankless job sometimes. We volunteer for this every day. And because we do that, we'll stand with our children and our teachers who deserve our support. And we're not going to give up. We're going to be there for them because 215,000 kids are depending on us. Thank you.
So when we're talking about 90% of our students in our schools are meeting standard, that's a lot. We have done significant improvements in HISD, but no one is saying the improvements that we've made and the gains that we've made since 2015. We have strived high and we've reached high. Have we hit the mark on some of our schools? We're working on it right now, especially for the last ones that they're actually focusing on. We have a plan in place. As Rhonda said, we're the captains of this ship. And we're going to make sure that we're going to stay afloat, that HISD will not fail. We will not have a board of managers that's going to come in and try to destroy public education, as they have done in some of the other districts. We will continue to shine light on education in the Houston Independent School District. We are Houston, and we are one team together. And we cannot do it with our teachers. We definitely cannot do it without our parents. And most importantly, we cannot do it with our students. So yes, it's a little battle, but I know that we can achieve it because we've proved it. Just this year alone with our projections, we are slated to remove a little bit over 20 schools, not 20 schools, from off the IR list this past school year. That's tremendous gain. But no one is talking about that. They're not talking about how we have closed the achievement gap and we have improved our graduation rate. No one is talking about that. But one of the things that we need to look at as we stand together as Team ISD, especially in our schools, remember, these schools are all in historically poor, disadvantaged African-American communities. Who comes up with the idea to close schools in African-American community? Who does that? But we will stand behind our schools. Like Trustee Jones said, we will make sure that we have the wraparound services available to our schools, and we're committed as leaders of HISD. The board, we've done the work. We've accomplished a lot in the last 3 years since this bill has taken effect. And we will continue to do great things right here in Team HISD. And the question is, will you be on that ship with us? If there are any questions at this time, we'll be more than happy to entertain questions for you. And again, on behalf of the HISD Board of Education and all the team of 10, we want to thank you all for being here today.
Go over
Charmaine?
the triggers, thanks, of what would, quote, put a school on, like Kashmir or whatever, on the list that could.
I'm gonna let Trustee Jones, because Kashmir is the one that has the highest number. I think Worthing is number 2, and then Wheatley. So the majority of the schools that's triggering this, unfortunately, on the north side. So I'll let Rhonda address that.
What those campuses are, so that we know for sure, we're all talking about the same thing, and then what is it, like, how many years it has to be on what kind of a list, you know what I mean? Thank you.
Okay, they're going to provide us with the list, but the trigger for, at the tipping point for board management is 5 years or more improvement required standing.
Sorry, 5 years.
Any one school can trigger a board of managers or closure for the entire district if it is 5 years or more in improvement required status.
So what would be a reasonable amount of time for any given school to meet the standards the state sets?
As in relation to the 10 schools the schools that are listed on the list today, or previous school?
How long do you need? Do you need 2 years, 3 years, 10 years? They keep shifting?
Okay.
So if you Google any research, it'll show that a school turnaround average is 3 to 5 years with the correct investments in the school. This principal at Kashmir, for instance, has been there 2 years, and we've seen gains each year. So there has been no regression. I believe with the third year, they would come out of IR. But you have to put the proper resources in, and that only began 2 years ago.
And when you look at Worthing, one of the things that we did do in 2015 is when this piece of legislation came out, met with the superintendent at that time, and we was able to allocate resources. And if you go back to some of your own TV reporting, Worthing High School is one of the schools that has the highest paid of teachers at that school and resources. But the question is it all about the money that goes into the school? You have to have effective teachers, leaders, principals, resources, wraparound services that's at that school, and a strong foundation structure for these schools to succeed. So there's a team approach, and that's one of the approaches that we are working on. So many of you may have had the current list. So we go down the list. The schools are Kashmir, Blackshear, Wheatley, Worthing, Dogan, Highland Heights Elementary, Kashmir Gardens Elementary, Victory Prep North, Victory Prep South, and Woodson K through 8. And one of the things that we will be voting on tomorrow is that Victory Prep North would no longer be part of a district charter with HISD, so that school will be removed. And it's projected that the 10 that we have projected as of now will leave us with 9, but we think when the projections come out officially by TEA that this number is going to change as well. So we're really proud of that we're seeing the decrease, but the question is, does TEA see the same things that we see in our growth efforts? Yes, ma'am.
Well, I want to ask because there are 5 other schools that have been in IR right now as far as we know for the past 3 years. So if they get IR again this year and they get it again next year, I mean, wouldn't the total then be closer to like 13 or 15 schools?
Only thing that we're focusing on right now is year 4, 5, 6, and 7. We have a couple of schools that are in year 3. So even if, and we're hoping that they're not, because actually part of those schools with projections again, because we have our projections, even of those IR3 schools, 2 are going to be removed. So we're actually focusing on those schools, and they will fall off IR, but they will go into year number 3 and 4. But with the Achieve 180 plan and some of the plans that we have in place, we should be able to eliminate these because we're real close. If you actually look at the data specifically at Kashmir, and you look at the indexes out of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, only index that they really failed, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was index number 2 that they did not pass. The rest of them that they exceeded by almost like 1 point or 2 points away. So they've excelled and have done great by growth, and that's what we're looking at.
But you won't know officially until next week, right?
We won't know officially, yes. And I think when the numbers come out officially on, we know what the numbers are, but by TEA, they gave us the information and we can't really release it at this time. It's embargoed, so we have to wait till they officially release them. But when we come out, you're going to be very, very pleased on what you see of our projections, according to the list that we have now and what was published and what the list that you will see on next week.
When you talk about,
Just a quick follow-up on that, like even if the number drops down to less than 10 based on the early projections, how confident are you that HISD, the team, with the superintendent, the board, that we can improve all of them by the end of next school year? How confident are you?
So I think the plan that they have in place is definitely more rigorous than previous efforts. And so I'm very confident that they will be able to have some effect in moving the needle there. My concern, though, is now that we've come close, again, when we get to the spring, if TEA moves the ball again, then we're unsure where that line is. So the best thing we can do, the best approach we could do is just teach kids and give them the tools that they need to pass any test and not shoot for a certain mark, but to maximize their potential.
And we're very confident, especially with Kashmir High School and how close they are. If the standards will remain where they are right now today, Kashmir will be off IR next year. So TEA told us just on yesterday that they are going to change those, and like Rhonda, Trustee Jones stated, we don't know where that margin is going to go. It's like every time that we reach it and we know we're going to pass it and exceed it, it's like they move the bar again. So at this point, do they really want us to excel, or this is a way that they can come in and really just, do the attack on public education on what we believe?
do you know,
Go ahead, I'm sorry, Jeff.
do you know for sure they're gonna change the standards in the spring?
They will change the standard. I had a meeting yesterday with Commissioner Mike Marath, and he said that they're going to be doing the recalculations, and those recalculations should be done in the spring.
How vigorously would you fight any takeover or oversight by the state?
Well, we have the determination as a board, and we're going to discuss that tomorrow. What's our next step? But that's not our priority. That's not even a part of our conversation about a board of managers. That's not even something we even thinking about. We're looking at the glass half full, and with the half full, I know that we can meet. We have some hardworking teachers, some hardworking principals, and we've done the work to be able to achieve and close the gaps like we've been closing. Rhonda?
So I will say if it comes to a point where the choice is closure or board of managers, as a trustee, I would rather walk away from this position than to see school closures. I know what happens in my community when a school closes, and I don't want that for any community. The schools are the epicenter of communities, and when you already have poverty-stricken communities and you remove the school, that's detrimental to not just the kids, but the entire neighborhood, and it only snowballs the effects of poverty. So I would, if it came down to them making us choose, I would definitely vote to walk away and have a board of managers, because I have always fought to not have school closure. I've never voted for it, and I never will.
And when you look at school closures, to me, either one is not an option. I think with HISD, we will lead the ship the way it should go, but based on 1842, there are only 2 choices here. And so closing is not an option. And being a proud graduate of Kashmir, which is the #1 on the list, the last thing, like when he looked at my face yesterday and said, you need to close Kashmir. I'm an alumnus of Kashmir High School. I played basketball for Kashmir High School. I received my athletic scholarship to 5-year to my university where I graduated from Kashmir High School. We've graduated some of the best I was going to say Kirby John Caldwell, who was a graduate of Kashmir High School. We've graduated some of the best students, athletes out of Kashmir High School. So to ask me to lead the chopping block to close a school that I dearly love, But being the president of this board, I endure all the schools. But closing, I'm with Trustee Jones. If someone put, like they said, like Harold Dutton yesterday, talking about why we have to put a gun to your head. You're not putting a gun to your head. I think you shot us in the foot when you authored this bill 3 years ago. Not knowing when you authored this bill that it would force closure of our African-American schools in the district. And so with this bill, what it has done though, it has allowed us to look at our schools closely and look at the leaderships of our schools to be able to provide the best quality education possible with effective teachers in every classroom to improve literacy among this district and making sure that all of our kids have the best to a quality education. I'm gonna ask Dr. Wilson to come because you asked a question about our plan and what the administration is doing to be able to achieve these goals. She's the chief of staff of the Houston Independent School District, and she worked very closely with their superintendent, and I'm gonna ask her to engage on remember, we're the board. The administration is the one that guides and tells us which direction that he or she is going to go in. Dr. Wilson?
Thank you so much.
Sure, just for clarification before we leave the subject about closing schools, I'm sorry, perhaps I misunderstood. I thought it allowed the TEA to take over management of a struggling campus, but you're saying it's...
There's two choices in 1842. One is a board of managers. The other one is close a school. Remember, we can reopen the school and make them into district charters if we choose to be able to give the magnet programs, repurpose the school, reconstitute the school. We have that option. So it's only two options here. But the board of managers, one of the ones, either way, if we be real, if a board of managers come in, they're going to close the schools anyway. And if they close the schools, those schools will never reopen again. So let's just be real about that one.
So then why are you closing Victory Prep North?
Well, Victory Prep North was an in-school charter, and they came on, was it 2 years ago? 2 years ago, and according to HISD policy, if you are in-district charter,
They asked to be closed.
No, what I'm just saying, I'm giving a basis. So if they're an in-district charter, and if they don't succeed in 2 years on whether or not if they're going to be a success for campus, they can request to be closed. And so at this point, Victory Prep New, because you have Victory Prep 1 and Victory Prep South, they asked us to close them.
They're combining.
They're combining, yes. So they can request, if they know that they're not going to be able to meet the standards, they can request to us to be removed. So that was up to them they're choosing to be removed. And so that's why they're on the board on this coming Thursday for removal.
Are y'all going to consider some sort of other options for some of these schools, like reopening them as magnets or repurposing them?
Tomorrow, we have a meeting with the board, and one thing about me, even though I'm the president of the board, I do not make decisions alone. After conference with our board members on tomorrow night, hopefully many of you know, we're still dealing with a lot of things concerning our previous trustee who passed away. And so tomorrow, we will be, doing some celebratory things for that. But after that, we will go into closed session and we'll talk to the board about what's our next steps. And TEA will be here tomorrow to be a part of the conversation so we can know what our next steps are and what we can do. But my goal is that no schools be closed and there will be no board of managers. I think that we can do it as Team HISD. Yes, ma'am.
Why is it a closed session?
Because when we talk about personnel issues, it's closed session.
But it's closed.
It's teachers, we're talking about, yes. It's legal matters. So once we do that in closed session because it is legal, and we will be talking about teacher personnel structure. Because if we do structure, there will be some changes. So publicly, we don't, as you know, we don't discuss personnel issues matter. I'm gonna go ahead and ask Dr. Wilson if she would just to come forth and address, I think, you had the question about what is the plan as we continue to move forward. Dr. Wilson?
Thank you so much. One of the things that the board approved during the budget process is the Achieve 180 plan, which we will continue to implement across the board for all schools. However, after the recent meeting that the board president and the superintendent attended, several meetings in Austin, we are at this time planning to take greater make greater emphasis on these struggling 10 schools that we've identified. We don't have the number right now, but we are planning for the 10 schools, and we are going to increase the number of supports that they have. We're going to identify what the exact root causes are and ensure that the schools have definite supports that they need. We're going to likely streamline the structure so that those schools will be able to get to the superintendent more readily, so that they don't have to go through as much red tape when they recognize that they are facing any barriers that are keeping them from being successful. So not only do we have our district-wide plan, we're also looking at this time to ramp up the efforts in these schools because we understand the severity of it. And the board has directed us through the 3 board goals that these are the emphasis, these are the areas of emphasis that they have, and they definitely are student achievement and closing the achievement gap and having all of our schools be successful and meet standard.
So then should we expect to see staffing and/or leadership changes in any of these schools?
We don't anticipate any leadership changes at this time. Any staffing,
We had them.
we've had them already at the beginning of the year, but from those individuals who received principalship assignments at the beginning of the year, we don't anticipate any additional changes there. The staff changes that we anticipate will be increases to the staff, or changes in what the staff members are responsible for.
What about the other,
More resources.
what about the other tiered, Achieve 180 schools like Madison High School and like?
Exactly. Those are the ones that will continue to be served by the plan that we submitted to the board in June.
So it's just gonna be extra that's going to these 10 schools? and
Yes.
Extra than what even the plan spelled out?
Yes.
So it's, again, just extras in terms of this?
Well, extras that are identified, once we receive the results, we'll be able to look at a root cause. What is the root cause of these schools not meeting the standard? So that may tell us information that we don't have. It may be something in literacy, it may be specific or germane to, reading specifics of comprehension or, that kind of detail. So we're pulling down into the granular level of identifying the root cause of the problems in these schools that did not allow them to meet the standard. So that may require additional resources.
And why still do Achieve 180 with all 32 of these other schools when really it seems like, these 10 schools are on fire, we need to put them out, these other ones have smoke alarm issues, maybe they're not as.
Well, both of our board members did say, we cannot ignore the schools that are at the 3-4 level. We're not going to ignore any school. We love all of our children. It's about our children. So if we're not if we find that our children are not being successful in any school, in any area, we need to shore up these schools that are identified in that group of 30. We need to make sure that we're tending to them not only financially, but with the full resources of the district.
What, if anything, can parents do to impact this?
Well, we absolutely depend on our parents in order for us to be successful in any way. We need to also help our parents in some of our historically underserved communities, and we're doing that through, again, Achieve 180, which has a parent engagement component. But we're also increasing the number of community schools that we have across the district, which is another priority of the board, that we do have these community schools that allow us to engage with the city and the county to provide social services to the schools and to the families that we may not have or we may not be in charge of.
So there's nothing specifically, any actions they can take?
Well, absolutely. They can stay engaged, as, both of our board members have identified
Or
before.
at the elementary school level, our parents can be engaged with making sure that their children are coming home and reading and improving their literacy skills. Look at their report cards, look at their data to see where they are academically. See if they're comprehending the studies that is placed upon them. Those are some things that our parents can do. And, at every level versus high school, middle school, elementary school, that's the engagement that we need. We cannot do this without the parents. And we definitely cannot do this without the students. The students have to play their part in this as well. And so we're not only just going to go out and talk to our community leaders and engage our organizations, we're going to talk to our local parishioners and the faith leaders in the community, because some of these parents and students, they attend their local congregations. And we're going to have our assemblies with our kids to let them know that the legacy remains upon your shoulders. And so we need you as well. So we're a part of this as a team. No one is excluded. For instance, you talked about Madison High School. If you look at the growth of Madison High School within the last year, they're in IR2. If you look at their growth, they missed it by one student. But they didn't make it. But it was one student. Can you imagine? Like one student. You know, just one student. And so, and we're trying to, and hopefully that appeals process will go through and they'll be able to find out exactly where that discrepancy is with that particular school. The data does not fabricate the truth when it comes to where we are. One thing I can applaud Trustee Jones for, this is not new to us. We knew about this when it first came about. When you talk about Cashmere High School and you talk about principal changes, when this came about, she recommended we need to look at leadership changes at Cashmere High School. They started that change 2.5 years ago. That's why they're where they are right now today. They just didn't start this just today. It's just that now they're saying we just have 11 months to get it right. But they started this 2 years ago. So we're not late on the train. It's just these are the schools that's remaining. And just unfortunately, we have one of the schools that's at the top of the list.
So my answer to that question is parents need to vote. If they care about public education, the public education model, then they need to check the record of their legislators and see how they're voting on public education issues. And when March comes, remember how to vote. You vote for people that represent your interests.
And when you look at this particular bill, and I challenge you to go back to see who voted and who supported this bill. Go back and look at it. And Rhonda is right. My thing is I'm thinking, academically, and Rhonda comes back, that's why they call us, really close about voting is really important. But go back and see who supported this. And you would be very surprised. And to figure out now when I get a phone call late at night, and I'm not going to say the rep's name, but the rep said, this was a stupid vote on my part. I didn't even read it. How do you think I feel as a trustee to hear a representative call me at 9 o'clock at night and say, I apologize because I didn't read the bill in 2015. I didn't know what it said. I didn't know what I was voting on. But when I read it Monday, I realized it was a stupid vote on my part. How did a representative call the board president and say that?
Do you feel like
So.
the current standards are reasonable, or do you have an issue with the standards there?
We definitely have issues with the standard. Rhonda has served on the board as long as I have. When you keep moving the bar like that, it's like you setting us up anyway, and it's just a move. When you look at from Congress all the way down with how they feel about public education, when you look at Houston as being, we're a minority-led city. Let's just call it what it is. And when you have a dynamic board like I believe that we have, you have a wonderful mayor in the city of Houston. I just think that it's just one of the things just about public education that I don't think people want it to exist.
Saying about change.
Yes.
I'm just wondering if the existing standard, like if it all stayed the same, what currently exists, do you feel like that's fair, reasonable, or?
I think the standard is reasonable. As a parent, having had and educated 5 kids in public, charter, and private, that's no secret. My kids all got an education tailored to what their needs were. As a mother, I think the standard across the country for education is low. The standard is what is currently being achieved, but I think we definitely have to ratchet it up. If our kids are going to be global competitors, it does have to ratchet up, but it needs to be done in a way that can be kept up with the investment in dollars. We can't achieve a goal and there's no infusion of capital to achieve that goal. We're not taking our kids out, sitting them under a tree, giving them a Big Chief tablet and a No. 3 pencil. it requires innovation, it requires technology in order to compete globally. And when you're not making the investment, when we are still functioning by 1980s funding in 2017, that matters. You can't increase the rigor. You can't do a lot of those things without the infusion of dollars that needs to do that. So we need to ratchet it up, but there's no way to do that without the investment in our future, which is our kids.
And we definitely want to see,
Absolutely.
they have
Absolutely.
to, they have to fix and fund public ed. When you bring a special session and you say, we're going to vote to get a committee or commission to look at finance, we don't need that. We already know that we've done it before. We already know that, that we need extra money. When you cut almost $2.9 million billion dollars from the education budget, and you cut it by 386 per student allocation, and you lower that amount, how do you expect for us to operate on the funding that you provide to us? That is a lot of money that you've cut away, and you never restored the money that you took. Was it $5 billion? $5 billion that you took. We're not even back to standard where we were 5 years ago. If they would even just restore us back to what they took away from us, at least we'll be able to operate a little bit. But, you know, they have the hammer, they have the hand, they will not fund public education. We don't have the resources for someone to say, oh, we're going to raise teacher salary up $1,000 per teacher, but we want the school district to do it. My question is how? How do you do that? How do you do that?
You said that you expect about 20 schools to come off the IR list.
No, we did already. We removed 20 schools came off last year.
This year.
Last year. Do you know about how many you're looking at this coming year that'll be?
So there will be,
We just
yes.
counted them.
So we expect 28
to come off.
in total, and of those, only 6 will be the 5-year plus. So we're still closing that gap and making gains in that area.
Right. So we're doing what we're supposed to do as a board and with the administration, and we've closed those gaps. And I would say 90% success rate, and where we're heading in the right direction. Yes, ma'am.
I was just wondering if there was any other color that you could share with us about your meeting with the Texas Education Agency?
From this week or what we having tomorrow? Whew, Lord, let me see where I start. I know, first of all, the TEA met with the Harris County delegation on Monday afternoon. I think that's what triggered a lot of this. They met with the Harris County delegation first, and this was around about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Monday afternoon. So this was the entire delegation of Harris County from all party lines that was in this meeting, and they discussed 1842, where we are, and how we're moving forward. They showed the map. They didn't focus on HISD, they focused on the entire state of Texas. And because you have some representatives there from other districts. Because remember, this only affects HISD. It affects, I think it's about, is it like 40 school districts across Texas that it affects? And unfortunately, we're the largest one out of all of that. So they showed the map of all the schools. But then, of course, we're the biggest elephant that's in the room, HISD. So they talked about them. What's the plan? They mentioned the Achieve 180 plan that the superintendent is implementing here. They mentioned the budget. And when you mention the budget, everybody gets quiet, because they know it's not enough money in there to sustain what we're trying to do. So that was the basis of the conversation, because I actually called TEA and I asked them, and then I called another representative and I asked what was being said in the meeting. In other words, the language when they walked out and what they told me, fix it, and if you don't fix it, we're closing schools. And so that means either we come up with a plan, and we're transparent, either we come up with a plan as a board, which I'm sure that we can on tomorrow, but we don't want someone else to come in and dictate, to bring in someone else. You take away the voting power from the constituents in the community and appoint people to the board to govern when they really don't have a stake in the area whatsoever. So that was basically their conversation. My conversation with all the delegations from Monday all the way up until my plane left on last night was about how do we come together as a board some of the representatives. And out of respect to a lot of them, they did admit that they did not read this piece of legislation. And some of them was like, you have to fix it. And because it's now becomes, the majority of the schools are in my district, what are you going to do to fix it? And so the question is, we have a plan to fix it. We think that the plan that we implement is going to work, but it will not work without the necessary resources that we need to provide to this administration to be able to move forward to implement these particular plans. But I think as a board with the bright minds that sit on this board team of 10, I believe that we have governed well, that we've done great things in the district. We've hired effective teachers. We've set the standards and goals for the superintendent to reach around literacy and improving the quality of education within our schools. And so we've done that, and we proved that even within this last budget. But now we're at a point to focus, and the focus is on our most critical needs, and will be these 10 schools. By Monday, we're hoping it's going to shrink to 7, to be able to work on those and make those schools our priority, and putting together and implementing a team to be able to go and to assess those schools, to be able to see what resources will be necessary. But we cannot wait to the 9th hour to make that decision. We have 11 months. We will not wait to month 10 to decide what we're going to do. The work starts right now.
Thank you so much, everyone.
And thank you all so much for coming. You know which ones came off, right?